Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a talk about Joseph, one of my favorite biblical characters. Uh, let's see, who else are favorite biblical? Melchizedek. I love Melchizedek. Come on, some applause for Melchizedek. It's amazing. I definitely feel that he was a type of Christ. And Jesus was a type of Melchizedek, if you look at Hebrews. And Zebedee. But yeah, Joseph is like Jesus and Elvis all wound up together. The Technicolor Dreamcoat and all of that. But seriously, quite a flamboyant and humble character at the same time, extravagant in some ways, extremely good looking, apparently, it says right in the Bible, and also representing some of the characteristics that we might think of when we think of Jesus in terms of compassion and so forth. One of the most interesting things of this section, and I'm talking about Genesis 40 to 42, one of the most interesting things is this is maybe, I don't know, maybe not, but God seeks and wreaks a kind of revenge here through Joseph on Joseph's brothers, who were just, I saw Johnny Cash one time, and he was talking about the men that his daughters had married, and he referred to them as not worth killing. But this was Johnny Cash. So anyway, yeah, but a kind of revenge, like a light version, one that aims for reconciliation and redemption rather than mere destruction. No bloodshed. Old Testament, Genesis, and God exacts revenge without bloodshed. It's pretty cool. All right, so let's take a look at what goes on here. It's a lot about divine providence and God's timing. We could probably talk about God's timing in every single one of these Bible commentaries because it's so important, and it's so important to us to always be keeping that in mind. If we feel God hasn't answered this prayer, well, you expect him to do it on your timeline or his, So, also the contrast between the human forgetfulness and God's unwavering faithfulness. If you'll remember, the cupbearer of the Pharaoh actually made a promise to Joseph, and he forgot about it. All right, so here's some key points. Joseph is an innocent man in prison, forgotten by men after being wrongly accused and enslaved. But even in his suffering, he shows compassion, and he's interested in the well-being of others. He even says to somebody, "Why do you look so sad today?" So Joseph embodies this Christ-like compassion even when wronged, focusing on others' needs instead of self-pity. Now, this, I'll tell you what, modern term, to be pranked, somebody pranked me, or, I really pranked that guy. It's like you did a prank on them. This, what Joseph did with his brothers and putting the money in the bag and the whole thing. Look, you know what I'm talking about. If not, then go and read it. Yeah, he did actually pull quite a prank on them. And that was kind of the revenge, and there's some sense of humor and all of that too. So the situation with the cupbearer is that it highlights human fallibility and self-interest. The cupbearer got what he wanted after Joseph told him what his dream meant, and it was favorable, and it was, but he forgot to tell Pharaoh to let him go. This was actually the cupbearer. There was the baker. Didn't work so well for the baker. Rather be a cupbearer than a baker. But God's plan is not thwarted by human actions, inactions, fallibility, dementia, or anything. It just unfolds on his timeline. God says it should be done, and it will be done. This forgetfulness is part of God's plan because it allows Joseph to stay in prison until the exact moment needed to meet Pharaoh. But that was about 2 years. Now, could you imagine being an innocent man for 2 more years? 2 years. 2 years is a long time sometimes. And could you imagine just rotting in prison? But Joseph remained faithful, remained righteous, remained Christ-like. Okay. So then, going forward to Genesis 41, Pharaoh has these dreams. He needs an interpreter. And that opens up the door for the release of Joseph because somebody tells Pharaoh that Joseph is good at interpreting dreams. Joseph is asked by Pharaoh to interpret his dream, and he gives credit immediately to God because, Joseph wasn't a psychic or a fortune teller or anything like that. He knew what power that he had, where it came from. And he told him that he can't interpret dreams on his own. It's not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Speaking about Pharaoh, well, you can speak about another person in the third term, but that's a little bit unusual. Instead of God will give you a favorable answer, he says God will give Pharaoh. He's talking to Pharaoh. Anyway, whatever. The elevation of Joseph I remember I was at church and the pastor said, wow, your trajectory is remarkable. I haven't really seen anything like that. And I said, maybe you need to read Joseph. The elevation of him from prisoner to second in command of Egypt, Pharaoh even saying, except for the throne, you're in charge of everything. You're equal to me. So God demonstrates his ability to use justice and power without a physical battle or immediate punitive action against his wrongdoers. Okay. And then Genesis 42 is the fulfillment of the prophecy, which was based upon what Joseph told Pharaoh about his dreams and the 7 fat cows and the 7 thin cows and how that represented drought and plenty. The plenty coming before the drought so that they were able to stack up a amazing amount of grain and so forth, so much that it couldn't be counted. So years later, the famine forces Joseph's brothers to come to Egypt, and they unknowingly, they know that they're bowing down before the second in command of Egypt. They just don't know that it's their brother, but it fulfilled Joseph's childhood dreams. I'm going through this in a way that presupposes that you're familiar with the story. It's one of the most famous stories in the Bible. So I'll just say, jump around the way that I've been doing. Now, Joseph's actions at this point are not about personal revenge, although they could very well have been, being left in a pit to die, but about testing his brothers' hearts and bringing them to repentance and self-awareness of their past sins. The brothers themselves acknowledged their guilt, saying, "We are clearly guilty concerning our brother." And there was one of the brothers who was like, "I told you we shouldn't do this." Yeah, great. This demonstrates a form of, like I said, divine revenge, maybe in quotes, or justice that aims for reconciliation and redemption rather than mere destruction. God uses the natural consequence of famine to bring the family to a place of healing. So it actually works out. Everybody gets back together. There's one brother that's gone. But so God uses the natural consequence of famine to bring the family to a place of healing, where the primary suffering is the internal guilt and consequence of their own actions, not a direct bloody strike from God. But I've been running myself through some guilt lately. It was only just today, as a matter of fact, that I had to come to the crossroad of like, all right, which way am I going to go? Continue to kick myself with guilt or accept grace? And when you get to that crossroads, the thing that presides is your faith. And if you are in Jesus, and if you do have that faith, then you can move forward from there on the road less traveled. And that's what I would hope for you. And I would trust would be the case with you. So ultimately, God's plan is always at work, even when the circumstances seem bleak or unfair. Come on, we all want wine every once in a while. This is so unfair. God, why are you putting me through this? Aren't I favored? Aren't I saved? Don't you believe that I believe in you? And so forth. And that's not great. More ideal would be that we would just have faith. The overall message is summarized later in Genesis 50, verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. You could just see the whole thing played out. You know how God looks at the world, right? You've heard this before, right? It's like one of those dioramas, one of those models of like a Civil War battle or something. He's looking right down on it. And he's looking at the entire time track of humanity and from before and after. And he can just come down at any point along that line and see what's going on and execute his will. So he was all along, of course, God was planning how this would all play out. And so, we got nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about but worry itself. Trust in God's perfect timing and purpose, even in the midst of trials. And remember to extend grace to others as we have had grace extended to us. And seek reconciliation as Joseph did with his brothers. Always be seeking that whoever the dramatis personae are in your particular drama, that they will benefit by God's grace. and that you can extend grace to them. And that even if you don't like somebody, you still got to love them. That's what we've been commanded to do. You don't always have to like everybody. But we are called upon to love each other. That seems like a good place to jump off here. So, love you all, and see you next